Inge Goldstein, my mother, was born in Berlin in 1929. At the age of 11 in 1939, she and her sister Nellie were smuggled out of Berlin disguised as Catholic schoolchildren to a waiting ship in Bremen, Germany. This ship, the Hamburg, was the last passenger ship that came out of Germany that went to New York, landed on August 28th of 1939, 3 days before the beginning of the Second World War.
The beginning of my life was not at a good time in history. I was born in 1929, and at the age of 4, my mother died, and shortly after that is when we began to be aware of hustling on the streets, marching, strange uniforms, a lot of clicking on cobblestones. My father was deported after my mother died. It was my sister, 9 years my senior, myself, and my father. And in about 1937, in the middle of the night, there was a rap on the door, and 2 SS men, not in uniform, came and took my father out with him. We didn't know what was going on, really, except this was not good news. What happened was, which we found out later, is that my father was being exchanged as a man who was born in Poland with Polish citizens living in Germany. So there was a swap. This was all preparation for the war. One of the outstanding memories I have is that when I was about 6, I came down with a strep throat. I didn't know it was a strep throat, but I was quite sick. And a nun in habit came. Somehow somebody informed her about these 2 sisters living alone in Berlin, during a very volatile time. Anyway, she brought me back to health, which was a miracle. But what happened was my sister got sick, and she was sick for a very long time. And we became very dependent on this Catholic nun who saved our lives, really. She healed us, and when my sister returned to health, she bid us adieu and good luck. We cried. We didn't want her to leave. She was the only stable, healthy thing in our lives. But she made it clear that she had to go heal other people, other Jews who were sick. So onward, I had been going to a Jewish school, and the school closed. So I was no longer in school. I really don't know what my sister was doing at that time. Working, going to school, 9 years my senior. Hard to know, hard to put things together. So some outstanding memories is what I will give you. We lived in a lovely apartment building, and we had a lovely apartment. And we had a terrace high up. We had plants that kept you from having your full body exposed. So I could look over the side and see what was going on down the street. And one of the things I remember as being one of the scary things early on was the clopping of the boots on cobblestones. And when I looked out, what I saw were young men in uniform carrying torches and chanting. I'm not sure I understood what they were saying. I only knew that I better not expose my body because there was danger lurking in the street. My father had taught me about danger going back a little ways when he took me to a parade, and it was Benito Mussolini who was being honored And I said something in my youth to say, "Oh, he has no hair." And my father grabbed me, covered my mouth, and we left together. That's when I knew there was some things that were really very seriously dangerous. Other vague memories that I have is I remember down the street where I lived, there was a neighbor. I don't think I knew her. I knew her family. And she, as other people did during that time period where danger was lurking, being Jewish was threatening, what I do remember they're saying is she put her head in the oven and she committed suicide. I didn't quite understand, obviously, the meaning of all that. I didn't understand a whole lot of things other than here we were, my sister and I, her name was Nellie, alone in this lovely apartment, and people were coming in, neighbors, all during the day and taking out some of the precious, valuable things that my father had collected over the years. And there wasn't anything we could do when we were enlightened enough to say, "What are you doing? What are you taking that's not yours, it's ours?" You just shut your mouth and hoped that it would quietly just go unreported or not create any further difficulty. What I'm trying to convey is that wherever you were, wherever you looked, wherever you were in touch with feelings, there was a very threatening sense of danger. I had two sisters who lived up the streets that were Jewish, they were my friends, and we played every day as long as I could remember. And then one day, she was not allowed to play with us because she had to walk to our apartment building, which exposed her being in the street. And what was not a Jewish community, it was just a middle-class existence. So that friend no longer was in my life. And then there was a little girl downstairs in the building that we lived in who was not Jewish. And she and I would play too. I still remember one of the specialties my father offered us as a goodie reward was cornbread with a heavy crust, and on it was pig fat instead of schmaltz, the Jewish version, chicken fat. And this child, too, suddenly disappeared out of my life. And I found out, I think the parents were kind enough to tell me that you're Jewish, we're not, we can't play with you anymore. So those were, I think, dominant themes that wove in and out of my life. I personally, I think, was overwhelmed with fear and the sense of danger every day of my life from that point on. We were rescued. My father met a childhood friend from the little town in Poland near Lodz, big city. They'd known each other as young people. My stepmother-to-be left for America when she was a young woman with her husband, and so she was an American citizen. They reconnected, and she was the person who saved our lives. Again, we had a lot of people rescue us. Being an American citizen and meeting my father and having a ready-made family because she was widowed allowed her to look for visas for this family. And in the nick of time, she was able to get us visas, my father, my sister, and I, while she was in the States. And next thing I know, we were on the SS Hamburg, coming to America. That part was, I can't say it was easy, not too memorable, because my father, who was still in a camp of some kind in Poland, came in the middle of the night, and we had a family whistle. He whistled that he was there. We had to immediately meet him downstairs. This is what I remember from my young age. And we were whisked off to the ship, which then, as I said, the SS Hamburg, docked in Hamburg. And once we were on the ship, I think we were pretty much out of danger. That doesn't mean that the other passengers were like figures. I don't think they were. Mostly what I remember is everybody being nauseous and hanging over the side of the rail and throwing up their guts, which I didn't do. So I was very proud of that. And the other important kind of sweet memory for me was when we came into the New York harbor, and people were very excited about the Statue of Liberty, which was then in sight. They all ran to the side of the ship to see the statue, and I ran to the other side to balance the ship. I was really terrified that we would topple. And then my new phase of life began in the Bronx, which is where Fanny, my stepmother, had an apartment, and life began again. Now my job was to become Americanized.